just doing something.
Hi
everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here. If you've joined us for the first time, we had a really great session last week, and if you want to catch up on that, it's on YouTube, and I think it's on LinkedIn Live as well. You can find it as well. Reach out to me if you need a link. I'm really delighted to welcome Arvinder and Leo back this week. Say hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
So this week we wanted to talk about Revit and what's going to happen in the near future with licenses. And it's quite important because the way that Autodesk are changing their kind of license, or they have changed their license agreement to name licenses, will have an impact on costs going forward. And that has an impact on how a practice essentially is going to run and how much it's going to spend on software. And we wanted to explore essentially some options around that, what practice can do to help with that, what new options are coming out, and link that back to discussions we had last time, which was about generative design. And essentially, just wanted to have a kind of talk about that to raise this as an issue. So we've got some kind of little bits of slides which will be here as well, but obviously the three of us are going to talk about it generally. I'm just going to kick us off right away. So this was just a reminder for us. We're going to talk about Revit and what that problem is. We're going to look at BIM 2.0, the new solutions coming out. We're going to talk a bit about workflows and what that could look like, and I suppose some of our ideas and aims for the future, because nothing is fully resolved. Q&A we've put at the end, but if you've got questions, then please ask throughout the session. I have got a comments section on here, so if your comments come up, I will ask the panel during the session. So please, any questions, just throw them our way and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, so I'm going to start us off and just move us on to this slide. So Leo, I'm going to throw you into this one. Can you tell us a bit about Autodesk moving to name licenses? What's happening? What's going to happen in the next couple of years? Why are we panicking? What's the crisis?
Yeah, right. Did you actually jumped into? I asked ChatGPT for could you illustrate the cost of Revit over time using a graph? Have you seen that? It was quite good. It went like literally parabolic between the years 2017, 2020, 21. So obviously the industry was doing extremely well then in order to charge us so much money for the product. But it was obviously I'm sort of like standing on the shoulder of giants when I talk about this. We've obviously done loads of work with Ian Godwin consultancy with the letters to Autodesk, and I've obviously worked really closely with Excitech Symmetry, who've kind of helped guided the practice I work for and other practices through this whole transition, and it has been going on for a long time. So we're talking about nearly 15 years, I think, isn't it? It's been 15 years for us, certainly, when we started using Revit, and the licensing journey and the cost journey has been going on over that time. But I guess what really changed was, as we discussed, kind of the shift from network licensing to named user. That's really when things had the biggest effect, because we all just loved like network licensing.
Yeah,
it helped with compliance, which is obviously a really big thing. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation about how we maintain compliance for software and EULAs and bits and pieces. But then, the big thing was the cost, wasn't it? It was like licensing cost per individual. And when we lost sort of that concurrent network licensing and we were forced into going to named user, it suddenly got really, really expensive. And this 2-for-1 journey, it started 5 years, not 5 years ago, it started maybe 3 years ago. Was it 2021?
Well, this is saying 2021 during COVID, it was extended. So it's good for 5 years ago, where they were starting to transfer over to this. Yeah,
and I guess what it is that we don't really we don't absolutely know what's going to happen at the end, do we? All we can do is plan for the worst. So, you know, I like to kind of round the numbers up and down a little bit just because it makes it easier. So at the moment, say for example, like it's costing me £1,000 per year for a Revit license, which is actually an AEC license, because the logic at the time when we made this decision was to convert everything to AEC licensing. So that was all collection for all software. So it was about 42, was it about 42 titles, something like that. Anyway, so we converted that, about £1,000, and then if you just go onto the Autodesk website and look what a Revit seat is, or even just an AEC seat, it's about £3,000.
Yeah.
So that's huge, man. That's huge. So we're all like in software costs when we're doing the budgets, looking at expenditure. Recently, you know, we look at what, a 5% increase a year, maybe 10%, 12, something. Some products that we use, maybe it'll be a bit more, but it's like a 300% rise. I think it's I think when I looked at my cost, it was 352% rise, going from where we are now to where we would be if we pay full retail pricing tomorrow. But like I said, we're not there yet. We get to the end of that road 2027, 2028.
Yeah.
But obviously as a small practice, I don't think we want to take out a mortgage for our software license.
Yeah.
But that's what we would be looking at. We would be looking at a huge increase in cost. Yeah. And how are we supposed to absorb that cost when fees are getting tighter, costs are going up for everything else? I just don't know how we would absorb that 352% rise in software cost.
Yeah.
So it's it's definitely focused in the mind, as we I kind of like, you know, I'm raising it at every kind of budget that we go into, just to make sure everyone's kind of like, okay, this is potentially what might happen. What can we do? What are we going to do about it?
Yeah. And Arvinder, you were saying before the session, you were like, I'm not sure, you know, about this, but I'm going to say you're younger, and is it surprising that Revit has this, or Autodesk has this model for Revit? Because you know, we see so many applications now, software as a service, you pay on a monthly basis, you turn it on, turn it off. You know, what do you think about this?
So I definitely got into the industry at the time when this was how Autodesk was doing licensing, which was user-based. So I was curious to really understand what the network-based licensing was like. Was it based on seats or per seat? Because if not, then that seems, you know, quite interesting. Although the way that the data that gets generated from a person working on Revit may not be as rich as it may be currently. And I believe that the user-based licensing maybe creates a much more enhanced data profile for Autodesk to improve their systems. It's a separate question whether they are actually improving their systems based on that data. But
I'll come on to that, yeah.
But I don't know if you guys can talk a little bit more about like what that network-based licensing was like. I mean, because I have no idea, honestly.
So when I worked at Hampshire County Council, they had Autodesk licenses, and predominantly lots of AutoCAD, and then they had a set of Revit ones. And what we had there, we had perpetual licenses. So we basically bought it, we had the license, and it was forever essentially. And each year we paid a small amount to just upgrade it, which was great, because we had a really good high quality piece of software at the time, which allowed us for a small cost to just keep up to date. And that was great. And that's how it worked. And then what's then happened was, and they were network licenses as well. So if you've got 50, I think the ratio roughly, if you had 100 people, we had about 2/3, maybe 70% of those with licenses. So 100 people could share those 70 because no one was in Revit 100% of the time. And, you know, to a greater or lesser extent, we kind of had the right number for the people. It was rare that we'd go over that number, which is really great because it means that you've got that headroom and it allows you to move up and, you know, to share it. And so, you know, you're only paying for 7 out of 10 licenses essentially, because people are sharing them. But when Autodesk went to named licenses, that stops. So everyone has to have their own license. So that efficiency doesn't exist. I don't know, Leah, if that was that the same for you?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. I mean, it was industry wide. There was no way getting around it. There was no way legally of getting around it. You know, we all want to stay within the terms of the license agreement, and those license agreements are completely different from different vendors. So you have to spend quite a lot of time reading all that documentation, understanding it, and applying it. But yeah, what Alistair says is basically exactly what happened to most companies, and that efficiency for network licensing was amazing, just because people's workflows weren't 100% in a single product. So you could run the system quite lean, and you would have tools to allow you to report on that, so you could see how close to the edge you were getting. So yeah, it was really cost effective.
I see. I do like that that workflow, because, you know, although Autodesk now allows maybe, I think, token based access to Revit, I don't know if it actually gets used too much, or if it even gets close to what the pros that the network-based licensing provided, which was that, you know, some people just aren't in Revit that much, and you would have to now buy a full license for people to just access a read-only model.
And this comes on to that. The next question is like, okay, they're charging loads of money for it. They're charging more money. Great. Okay, that's fine if the software is developing over time. And I went back. So I started using Revit in 2009, I think it was. And
wow.
I went back to have a look at it. And
early adopter.
Well, relatively weirdly, we were. It was only a small council at the time. We just had a new part, what we call part 2, an architecture assistant came in and he said, I use Revit, let's try it. And, you know, that was, we just started using it. But we got it, I think we had 2009. I had a look at the interface for that, and that was the old interface. And then in 2010, they moved it to the new ribbon, and they did the same for AutoCAD as well. And you can see here, hopefully, that between 2010 and 2024, there is minimal difference. I know there will be some additional things in the background with this, but fundamentally, the architecture of the software has not moved forwards. Like if it was 2010 and someone gave me Revit 2024, I could use it.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a problem.
But surely that saved on some user training, Alistair.
It's a very good point. Well, yeah, that would be a good point if the price stayed similar or was within reasonable bounds. But like you're saying, it's going up 300%. What was that over the last 3 years?
What did I put my numbers in? I basically put my numbers in of what I'm paying for Revit right now, and I'm on that 2-for-1 offer.
Yeah.
So I locked in when that offer came in. And I pay the same as what everyone else does, like 5% every other year. And I just basically used a percentage calculator, and I was like, what's the difference between that versus a full retail copy of Revit right now? And that was it.
Yeah. So that's,
But then, you know, we like you said, I mean, this is this is a question for you really, because I'm talking about the practices that I've spoken to Iona, where we bought Revit 15 years ago. You know, we've been on that. We bought Revit perpetually when it was like $2,000, and we paid like a small maintenance cost a year. It was great, you know. And then we shifted to network licenses. It was great. Whereas if we were starting a new architectural practice right now, when we had none of that past experience, and we were going straight in and going, right, Revit, okay, we're going to pay for it monthly, or we're going to pay for it over a finance 3 years at $3,000 a pop. Yeah, I don't know how you'd feel. I don't know how you'd feel about that. I mean, we feel like pretty, you know, we're not happy about it, but that's just because of where we're coming from. I guess, that historical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of, I mean, it's a huge upfront cost. I mean, not just upfront, it's a huge frequent cost.
It is.
it especially in the architectural industry, where we are constrained with fees, and especially as competition is growing, there's a lot more pricing, race to the bottom type of pricing strategies that architects have to employ to get projects.
Yeah.
It gets even worse.
Mm.
So I totally understand where you guys are coming from. And as a architectural designer myself, who, if I want to start a new company, I would have to take up a loan and hope that my company, I can get the projects to be able to afford that. And, hiring would be a bigger challenge. And as you hire more, you have to obviously expand your infrastructure. So it sounds kind of very difficult at this current stage for a new person to start a new firm, or a younger person to start a new firm in the current industry. And I've heard that sentiment from other architects myself, like from my colleagues and my classmates. They're all saying, it's the previous generation could start a firm. All they would need to invest in is the drawing equipment, or if it was perpetual licenses, to get started and to start getting jobs. And now you need to have this huge upfront cost. So honestly, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, that's a really nice place to segue into what is the solution.
Oh, great. Tell us all.
We've got it all sorted. Yeah. So, I mean, what we're exploring between ourselves and with the practices is the concept of BIM 2.0. And this has come out of Martin Day's work at AEC magazine. And he's championing loads of new software. So I think if you've got the opportunity to subscribe to this magazine, it's free, then please do. I highly recommend it. And also they've got Next Build and Next Dev later in the year in the UK and London. And it's a really excellent event. I haven't been paid to say that. So it's...
I haven't been paid. I haven't been paid either, and it is an excellent event. I go every year. It's it's brilliant. Anyone in AEC should definitely go. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Arvind, it'd be great for you to come over.
Yeah, do it.
I'm planning on it.
Yeah, that'd be really good. That'd be great. So the whole idea, there's new apps out there. There's new applications, and I was thinking the other day, if I started a practice now, what applications would I use? Given that Revit is a $6,000 investment, it's very unlikely I would use that, quite frankly.
Where are you getting $6,000 from?
Well, exactly. Where, as you start, like Arvinder says, you'd have to get a loan, basically, wouldn't you? Plus, you'd then need to get your computer, your laptop, which runs Revit. So that's going to be $2,000.
Wait a second. No, it's going to cost you $3,000 year one for the software.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you pay for it on a yearly.
Yeah, let's do it yearly. Yeah. I can't be doing this like 2-year projection stuff. That's far too long.
Okay. Yeah. So, but then hardware you've got to pay up front, haven't you? Plus other subscriptions to Google or
Microsoft.
I don't know if you guys have used Bluebeam, but we use that a lot for PDF editing after we export it from Revit. Basically, doing some Revit work afterward.
Yeah. I mean, software costs can get quite high. So I mean, just I'm going to skip this slide on just one, because these are some of the tools which are out there which are emerging, particularly in early stage design work. So rather than generative design, which we talked about last week, we're talking about tools which are there for early stage design, which may help because you can start using different software upfront early stages. So in the old days, it used to be, well, not in the old days, some practices use basic 2D tools up until planning. And then once they've got planning and they've confirmed for the next stage, they will then move into Revit. So that way they can, I think, feel a bit more nimble, because Revit can lock things in. It'd be a bit difficult. But there's inefficiencies in that workflow, particularly when you're using a 2D CAD with 3D SketchUp and trying to render and all the rest of it. So I'd always been like, use Revit from the outset, because you can just build in that efficiency across the project. But these new tools are potentially more nimble and allow you to work better earlier. And then you can wait until you go into Revit, which means you won't have such higher need for Revit. You obviously still need to buy some licenses for it for people to detail and start going to construction. But this is kind of the possible route forward. So I'm going to pause there. What do you think?
So, I mean, I totally agree. With Revit, the approach had been, you refine your model as you go. And I understand that in an idealistic world where, there's every stage creates a better LOD of your model. But if you're at LOD 400, let's say, and there's you're in the DD phase or construction documents phase, and there's a big change that happens because, the world is, unpredictable. So anything, COVID could happen, and supply chain can be disrupted. So you have to change your materials all of a sudden. Yeah. It's really, really difficult to go back in Revit, and you'd need to, basically scratch your model sometimes. And we've done that and restart, which is what you're saying. These tools, if they're nimble enough to allow for these changes to happen much quickly, then the one-way street that Revit provides in some sense. Obviously, there's features that Revit has that allow for options and creating different work sets. But I don't know if Revit or being in Revit makes the most amount of sense in an unpredictable world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really true. And just as an example, things like, so some of the tools here, which I've messed around with a bit. So HiPAR is really good for very early stage kind of space planning, but like kind of optioneering of kind of adjacencies of spaces. And they've kind of developed it over the last year or so to be slightly different from what it was built at the outset. Snaptrude as well allows you to do, scheduling out from a model and capture all that data, because they have built the data into that. So rather than being like SketchUp, which was just lines and planes, it's not very intelligent. Snaptrude's taken it to that next level, and it's, exports directly into Revit or other software like Rhino and things like that. Interestingly, Rayon is on here, bottom left diagram here, and Rayon is a 2D online tool, and it's just like Vectorworks used to be 20 years ago, 25 years ago. We used to make really beautiful 2D drawings with Vectorworks, and Rayon can now do that in a cloud environment, and it's a fraction of the cost of Vectorworks. It's a tiny, minuscule fraction of the cost of Revit. So if you're doing essentially a small project, maybe medium size, it depends on the level of complexity, it seems like a no-brainer that you would use that, I think.
How interesting. So are most of these tools that you have here, are they just mostly scattered across the different phases of a construction project, or are they mostly isolated, like we did, like in our last webinar for generative design? A lot of them were isolated to conceptual design or schematic design phases. And you mentioned Rayon design, which seems like it starts to chip away at the documentation stage, which usually happens in design development or CDs. Would you say a lot of these are still isolated toward the earlier design phase?
Yeah, I think so. And they've got to, it's hard, isn't it? Because you've got to get users to adopt this tool and start using it. And that takes time, and you've got to offer the right sort of functions, and you can't build everything all at once. So, one of the big things is about Revit is no one can compete with that currently, because no one can afford to build a tool as powerful or have as much functionality as Revit. So many of these tools are like, well, we'll take a small chunk and we'll do this bit, but we'll do it really well. Rayon's really interesting because the founder he did his PhD in generative design, and then he's gone on to build this tool, which is
Stanislas Jello.
Exactly, yeah. And he's built a simple 2D tool, and because I was thinking he's going to build a generative design tool, it's going to be the best thing ever. But he's, I think, thought to himself, what do people need across a large part of the industry? And across a large part of the industry, we're still in 2D. So they're, I think, building from the bottom up and going, let's build the best 2D tool we can. Let's engage with students and newly qualified architects and people who are beginning their career, and really focus on them, because then they can build up from that as they use it more and more, build more functionality into it. They've got a great user base. If you look at their social media posts, they're just beautiful. It's just a really great, they've got great style. And it will build over time. That's what I think they'll be looking to do. So yeah, I think we'll see. I mean, we've got Quonic on here as well, top right, and they've got essentially it's a BIM model viewer tool, but they're building in functionality where you can move and update the model, plus you can get a bill of quantities out of it. So that's quite useful for if you want to know the price of a job, or at least have an idea of it, you can start building costs into that model and start doing a takeoff from it. I think the right word is takeoff. Yeah, so you can get some early stage cost information into it, so you can see they've got a slightly different focus from what they're trying to build. We've got some comments here, and I haven't looked at that at all, and I've just noticed. Okay, so I'm going to put this up here. Yeah, so you've seen the gamut of licensing from Autodesk. I find it interesting. The price hike is coming. Is this both the physical cost per user is increasing, or the fact that the 2-for-1 is going away? It's both. Is that right, Leo? Is that right, aren't I?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that chart I would say basically it's only showing an increase. I mean, if only we had shares in Autodesk, we'd be rich, guys. But yeah, it's showing a nice healthy steep curve that way, and the 2-for-1 is basically just to end the perpetual maintenance people that bought it, back in pre 2022 or whenever it was. So yeah, that's just what we all assume that's just going to end, and there'll be no extension to that. There'll be no take backs. There'll be nothing. It will 2-for-1 will just end, and that'll be it.
Yeah, and this chimes with this comment where ultimately it's about share price and increasing turnover. So that is the reality. Autodesk are public company.
To be fair to them, like every other vendor has done exactly the same thing, haven't they? I did wonder whether or not ArchiCAD still do perpetual. I'd have to ask.
I think they've gone to software as a subscription as well. I noticed the other day. So they were quite late to that one. They held out for quite a long time.
Then. Yeah, they were probably the last. But yeah, I think everyone's obviously Adobe started this run, and everyone's jumped on it.
Yeah. Revit development has stalled over the last 10 years. Absolutely. And then we've got, wouldn't you be able to do a monthly subscription? You can, but the price of that is, I think I did it for 1 month. It was £364 or something for a month.
Yes, somebody's very kindly put the number.
Yeah, I think the next comment.
Revit's 300. Yeah, I was not far off. So it's that would give you flexibility. So you could go, well, this month we're just doing concept design, turn off Revit. But then when you get to that detailed design or stage 4 in the UK, then you're going to be you're going to be in it for months usually. So and then you're going to need multiple people as well. So that's it's a big challenge. So we've following on from that, we've kind of discussed together the the use of workflows and trying to explore what those workflows look like. And I've done a little bit of work here looking at early stage. This was looking at generative design tools, and this was part of the report that's coming out next week, is to show where these tools sit. So, you probably can't see it too well, but there are a number of different generative design tools. Some have greater utility over those work stages, and they're interoperable with different software. So whether it's Revit, AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, or Vectorworks, or Rhino, or they're open source. So you've got IFC schemas being exported from them to allow you to use them in different ways. That they all kind of exist. And then this was looking at some of those early stage tools like Arcol and Hypart and Snaptrude, I think is here, maybe a little bit lower. Looking at actually they could start to do some of that early stage stuff quite usefully. And more work needs to be done on this, which is what I've tried to explore with some of these diagrams to say, actually, where does this software come out? What can it export to? Unfortunately, in these, it still goes into Revit. And if you speak to Martin Day, he's really interested about auto drawing tools, which can take a model and create your construction documentation from it. That's a big next step, I think. And there are some tools which are being developed in that area. We'll see how that develops over time. Short term, it's not going to change much, I think, because they're not mature enough, but they will turn up at some point. And also, there was always a thought about why don't we go BIM to fabrication? Why do we go BIM to PDF to fabrication? It doesn't make any sense. So if we had more confidence over our models that could go straight into fabrication like Facet Homes do, that's really interesting. So I'll put a link in the chat after this when it goes online to Facet Homes so people can find that, because it's a really great system. But I don't know, what sort of workflows, do you think this would help with your workflows, Arvinder?
I definitely, yeah. I mean, so going back to your comment about automating, or at least working on the documentation part where Revit shines currently, and there's no other tool that is actually able to take on the full documentation approach for us. Like you showed a few different companies over there that are working on these tools. Very little amount of them are working on the documentation, which is pretty much I mean, I wouldn't say it's like the most important aspect of our deliverables, but it is the most important way to communicate currently in how construction works in our environment, the design to the construction workers. There's a person on the field who either has, if they're smart, if the company is high tech, they have an iPad on the site and are zooming in to see our drawings. Or usually I've just seen still large prints being on the site and getting produced or being used to create real lines on the site. So I think that's where a lot of work is needed. But I think what you mentioned, though, regarding why can't we go straight from BIM to fabrication, that's a really interesting point, because I was just talking to a few colleagues of mine a couple of days ago, and they were kind of talking about the same thing. They were like, we don't want a better Revit per se. It was a weird conversation, but they were thinking, it would be great to just produce, prefabricated stuff from our models itself. If you can just work on the models being LOD something, 600, you would need that type of level of detail, but go straight from there and just eliminate production or documentation. I wonder if there's any tools for that. You mentioned one of them, Facet.
So I've just put links in the comments section, actually. So one was Facet Homes. They've got a really great system where they bring a storage container to site with a CNC machine inside, and they've got technology which will transfer Revit model based on all of their kit, how they build things into CNC fabrication. It then gets cut on site using a CNC machine and then constructed on site. So it's a brilliant system. And Oliver Thomas is the person to speak to there as well. And Bruce Bell, I think, is the founder. And I've also thrown a couple of other ones on there. There's Our Automated Architecture. They're doing a nice system around prefabrication as well, and Data Form Lab as well. They've got an offsite construction piece of software as well. So these are building. And the other one I should put on here is Cope as well, actually. And I used to work at Cope, and I'm a big advocate for what they do, because they can take an IFC model and start to productize that model. So if you've got plasterboard in the walls, it can start to assign plasterboard to those elements, schedule it all out, show where the cutting is, reduce waste. It's really excellent. So I would recommend that highly. So I'm just going to move to this particular slide, because this is something I've been exploring last week to try and work out costs, because we talked about Revit, we talked about the costs, what does it look like, and then put it into a workflow, and then we can start to think, actually, how much does that workflow cost on a per user per month basis? Because that's all of this software works on a SaaS, software as a subscription model. And this allows us to go, okay, if I use these options, this is how much it's going to cost me on a monthly basis. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think of this? Do you think this could be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, anything visual is going to help the teams just like understand where all the costs are going. I mean, a spreadsheet obviously can achieve the same thing with just the titles and the numbers on them, but it's never been laid out in a workflow in this way. I think that could definitely focus the mind. Let us all look at kind of how we can maybe be a bit more efficient in that way. So yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I would like to see some sort of various alternatives to, if you want to get rid of Revit from our workflow, what are the cost implications of using certain softwares that are recommended through like research, maybe through your own report. Maybe there's 5 or 6 different options that are packages of software that can work well together. And I think you were kind of showing some of that in the previous slide. So this is something which it comes back to the ad marketplace, actually, that I've put together. So I've always had this thought that you've got all this amazing software on there that people can find quickly and easily. But what would be nice to do is to package together a workflow and say, look, this is a workflow, package it all together, and say to users, you can buy this workflow for, let's say, $200 a month or whatever it might be. And that, it's all been worked out for you, because I've done that diligence, or a team of people like me would have done that diligence and going, yeah, these things work together, and you can output from that, and you should be able to offer discounts on that. I'm giving away all my secrets here. But the first step, what I want to do is build a little configurator which goes, okay, I want to do this, and to do this, I need 1, 2, and 3, and I can go, okay, well, based on that, you probably need this software, 1, 2, 3, 4, and and then that will help them build that out. So that's something I'm trying to work out at the moment, a super simple no-code solution, basically, because I need a bit of more skill than I have to do that. But I think that's where we should be going, I think. Yeah, I think this provides it would provide a pretty good alternative to, a solution to the problems that I think a lot of people are facing. I don't think we're the only ones complaining about Revit. The people who are, it's only growing in numbers, and there's a serious need for alternative workflows. And if no other company is going to come in to take Revit's place for all Revit does, I think the separate software that all are kind of connected to each other, either through APIs that talk to each other or through file formats that are compatible, is going to be the solution. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. I think they're going to talk more about it at Next Build this year. So I think there will be more discussion about how we do that. And Speckle at the moment is the front runner in how to connect different software together. I'll put it in the chat as well, so people can see that, because they've done loads of great work around connecting existing software between, so ArchiCAD to Revit, Revit to SketchUp to Rhino, whatever it might be. They've built all these connectors. What they've achieved is very impressive, I think. Okay, there are no more comments, so I'm going to leave that for a minute. So just to try and wrap up a bit.
By Kerry Thompson, prefabrication requires detailed and well-resolved models. In my experience, this is not easy to achieve with many of the current architectural toolsets.
Yes.
Yeah, totally agree. It's really, so a lot of the architectural projects that we work on at Walker are kind of precast garages, which are all sorts of different complexities. They're not, most of the tiers of a garage are not perfectly flat, and they all are have cambers to them, and they're all sloped to drain water. And modeling that has been the biggest challenge, because we just cannot get the exact slopes to work right and to have them be shown in our documents. So, creating, prefabricating precast, especially to that level of detail, is just impossible with the current tool sets.
Yeah. And I would, Kerry, that's a really great comment, and you're absolutely right. And I'd refer you back to some of those tools which are developing. So Facet Homes, our Dataform Labs, and Cope are all doing great work in this area. There are other companies as well which are exploring this to say, essentially that idea of BIM to fabrication. How do we do it? And one of the big problems is, from my experience, is that contractors or even other design team members don't want to share their models because they don't want it to be relied on, or contractors won't accept the models as something that they can build from, so they rebuild them. And there's a lot of contractual issues behind all of that, which are to do with risk, unfortunately, and cost and stuff. But that's where we are. So as I say, Cope, Facet Homes and things are building systems which start to de-risk that, I suppose, by using very intelligent software and processes. And more will emerge over time. It's great. So Kerry's also said Speckle is very interesting. It is very interesting. Great. And this is a great comment. Great model building is a craft. Yeah. And it's hard. It is hard, and I definitely am not a Revit expert to the level that I know other people are. So it does take a lot of effort and skill to do that. All right, we're getting close to 45 minutes, so I don't want to go on for too long. This is just something we shared last week, the generative design report thing. This is going to come out next week, the full report, let's just have a look at it. This is the aim behind that is to look at a lot of these tools. So it does include the early stage design tools, but it also includes the generative design tool. I've built all of the assessment criteria into that. So that will be coming out next week. So quick plug for that. I've got any other questions at the end. We did say, so if anyone wanted to reach out to Arvind or Leo, then please get in touch with me and I can pass on their details, or you can find them on LinkedIn as well. They're both there. I'm really happy to answer any questions. Arvind is based in Chicago, so if you're in the US, maybe he'll be a great person to connect up with there. Leo and I are based in south of England, but delighted to speak to anyone that would like to talk to us. There is one more comment here I'm just going to put up here. Cope Facet can help with this and don't need you to have a detailed model, but yes, you do have to have design resolved, albeit they allow for redesign changes. And that comes back to automation and the intelligence of their software. if you if you've built your model, then you use their software on it, and then you change the model, you can use their software on it again quickly and easily, and it automates that process and gives you a new solution based on whatever may have changed. So that's where, you know, we've talked a bit about automation last time, and maybe we need to talk a bit more about this next time, because I'm just going to say, Arvind, because you had a comment said to you last week, said that automation is not doing your job and means you're lazy. Was that really what they were saying?
Yes. Yeah, at my it was a work meeting.
You don't need to reveal who said that, but
I'm not gonna. But it's it was a funny comment. Basically, it's just it's a mindset that a lot of people are going to have, and you know, there's always going to be people who want to keep the horse rather than take the car. This was the case, so it is what it is. But I do think that people who adopt, you know, or at least experiment with new technologies, and firms who do so, are going to see exponentially, you know, or significant learnings and significant progress in what they produce than others. So it's evolution in some sense.
So great model skills are lacking, Brandon. Absolutely. And that's okay. I think we can all improve. I could definitely improve. I'd also say that so many people don't necessarily want to go into that level of detail, which cuts into learning and mastering any software. True. I think there's kind of two sides to this as well, where you've got people who will go into a huge level of detail, and sometimes when they don't need to, and others who may not want to go into it enough for certain stages to resolve a thing. So it's a challenge knowing how much at what stage to actually do that.
I totally agree with your comment, Alistair. You know, although I agree that a lot of people do lack great modeling skills, especially when it comes to even family creation or customization of what Revit can do. But a lot of times, you know, the current construction processes, like going back to what I was saying before, don't lend themselves well to creating that level of detail. The return on value that you're getting from going deeper into the detail plateaus, I want to say, after a certain point. You know, maybe at around 350 or something. Yeah.
There's a great comment here. Hang on, I've got to show you this.
Yeah, I didn't even address that much, but it was funny. It was like, what world are you living in?
It's tough. We've got a very broad range of views, experience, knowledge, and you know, part of what we're trying to do, I suppose, through this is to try and raise that, saying, look, automation can do some really great things, stop you doing stuff you don't need to, so you can focus on the great design work. That's what we want to be doing as architects, for me anyway. But it's so someone else here has put automation is leveraging your skills. Yeah, absolutely. So Leo, I feel like I've left you out recently. Have you got anything you'd like to add? We go back to Revit licenses. Any tips if anyone is facing this issue? What do you think they could do?
Well, I'd like to say, don't panic. You know, we're doing these kind of webinars to try and like help everyone work through what may be difficult in a few years' time. I mean, obviously, Autodesk already have options in place. Financing, flexible credits, like a pay-as-you-go thing, monthly licensing, bits and pieces, and you know, who knows what else they're going to bring out. So. Yeah, and then, you know, more practically, we're looking at all this workflow stuff, aren't we? And looking at BIM 2.0 and seeing, like, challenging some of those traditional workflows and see what improvements we can make. Certainly using the automated tools as well. Really interesting to see how that's going to improve things for us, for sure.
Someone has asked, will this video be made after the live has ended? Yes, it will. It will be on YouTube live straight away. So when we stop the filming of this, it goes straight onto YouTube live, and you can find that at Ad Plus, I think is the handle for YouTube. or just reach out to me and let you know. But I'll put a link in the comments when this is over, and it will be there. And if you've got any questions afterwards, then please let me know. Okay, thanks, guys. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, I will let you go. Thanks to everyone who's attended and added comments. Really appreciate it, and hopefully you got something of value. We are trying to help as much as possible, and personally, I'm really enjoying this. But so we're going to do another one tomorrow.
Oh, God.
Next Monday, we're going to do another one next Monday, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the report a bit there and explore why I think that's going to be helpful. But yeah, in the meantime, I'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.